Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and, with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it when you spend time with us. Makes us feel all warm and fuzzy and know that we are touching hearts, minds, and souls out there in the vast space that surrounds us, especially when we're in the dark. I want to welcome you, but first I want to thank Ken Quiethawk for his amazing voice, his amazing intro, and the contribution he and his wife Deb have given to humanity through their voices and their websites and the videos that they have done. They have made a huge contribution to preserving history and the cosmology of the First Nation people, and if you haven't experienced their voices and their stories, please check them out. They are amazing. So tonight is one of my favorite nights. I have a lot of those. Mary Joyce comes back to visit Nightlight to share articles from her website, skysshipsovercashiers.com. And as I've always said, and will continue to, it's an amazing website. She covers a plethora of material. She gives you tantalizing information about subjects that you just have to go back and research. And I have to say, among other things, that she has an amazing search engine on her website, so you can type in what you're interested in, and she can take you back through decades and decades of shows, maybe not 2 decades, but at least decades of shows, and pull the articles that relate to what it is you're looking for. It's informative, it's educational, and it is, as I said before, very tantalizing. You'll get so caught up in it, you'll lose track of time, which I always do. In addition to editing her website, Mary has worked for the Orlando Sentinel in Florida as an artist and columnist, and the Oakland Press in Michigan as a Sunday magazine editor, and then a feature editor. Because of her website and the books she's written, she's been frequent guests on radio and TV shows, including Coast to Coast AM, which has an audience of about 3 million listeners, not too shabby for a daytime show. The Travel Channel, and internet TV shows in Ireland and Australia. In addition to her writing, her career includes working for a major metropolitan air pollution control agency, a community college, 8 successful political campaigns, the world's largest private printing company, and a Fortune 100 company, where she worked directly with many creative teams, including those at Marvel Comics, Golden Books, Mr. Rogers, Berenstain Bears, and Steven Spielberg's E.T. book staff. I encourage you to check out her website. It is amazing. You'll be enthralled, and it will trigger things in you so that you search out other areas to get further information on. It is an educational stepping stone, best I've ever seen. Well, that's why she's here, actually. So welcome to the show, Mary. Glad you made it.
Hi, always good to hear from you.
Oh, listen, we were supposed to be on last week, and I had to shift you around, And I'm not sure I remember exactly what we were going to be talking about, but I'm prepared to go in any direction you want to go.
Well, I'll tell you what's at the top of my mind, and you were probably so sick you wouldn't even remember what I said to you. Anyhow, I would like to get into the subject of Mars because I've come to believe that there is human activity on Mars and has been for some time. And, the government, NASA, they're always talking about things that will happen in the future. They've been saying for quite some time that they will have humans on Mars by 2030. And based on what I've seen, that's already happened. And that's true of so many things. We hear about them after the fact. Some of the early man-made spaceships, for example, we thought were from outer space because the government was dealing with very advanced craft, and they just assumed people didn't know about it. There's multiple reasons for that. One of them is because if there's UFOs flying over enemy territory, they can't blame the United States on it. But many of those vehicles since then have, proven to be real and proven to be of human making. But I first found out about something called Humans to Mars Summit back in 2015, and we posted an article about that, and it was simply titled Humans to Mars Summit 2016. I've since found out that the summit actually started back in 2013, and what they were doing is they were bringing in very notable people. For example, on the article that we wrote about that particular year, they had Buzz Aldrin, who was, of course, the Apollo 11 lunar pilot, and they had the chief scientist of NASA. They had the deputy administrator for NASA, professor of aeronautics with MIT. I mean, they had big names, and they were always talking about things happening in the future. Well, tonight I'd like to share some of the things that we've discovered that make it quite clear that humans are already on Mars. So I don't know if any of that interests you, but that's kind of what's foremost in my mind right now.
Oh, yeah, no, that's what I got notes on.
Oh, you do? Okay, well, good. We're on the same page.
Yeah. yes, we are. And actually, it's an area that I have, been fascinated with Corey Goode and all of his material, which is fascinating. And then, of course, there's Laura Eisenhower. And the most fascinating article that you have up there is the testimony of the boy from Mars, which I thought was incredible.
Really? That's the one you want to zero in on, huh? That is really something. Let's see if I can get my mind to get back there and collect some facts for you. He was, let's see. Let me get this straight here. He was a very, very young boy when he began to describe incredible things that a 2-year-old simply shouldn't know. And he was telling his mother about galaxies and different star systems and planets going around, planets and the moons that would circulate around them. Just stuff that a 2-year-old shouldn't know. And the mother knew nothing about this kind of stuff, and she, thought her son might be crazy. But then she started going to the library and doing her own research, and she found out these things he was telling her were absolutely true. And you can, jump in there and tell about the part of the story that you find the most interesting.
Well, I think the part that really intrigued me was when he started to talk about the people and the atmosphere and how there had been wars and how they had gone underground and how some of them had left the planet, of course. And to me, it made great sense. And he said that they breathed a different kind of gas so that oxygen would not be something that they would be comfortable with breathing. And it makes great sense when you look at all of his testimony about what they were like and how they lived, and then you come forward in time and you have all of the articles that you have on your website that show the structures and the space stations and the entrance to the underground that are there, that you give the sites on Google Space or whatever it is, or Google Mars, but you can actually see these structures that are there.
Right.
And what boggles my mind is that, and then you have people like Laura Eisenhower, who they tried to draft for the Mars program, but she didn't want to go, and and her great grandfather was Eisenhower, and he met with extraterrestrials. I mean, there's so much material out there that says something's going on this planet, and it's not a dead planet. It appears that there's still activity there.
Well, I know that one of the experts that they had speak at the summit in 2016 was somebody who was a cave specialist. There's some fancy name for it. We used to call it splunking. But the reason that this person was participating is they believe very strongly that the remnant of Martians that still lived there had to live underground and still do. And so they thought her knowledge of caves and how to survive in caves might be useful. You mentioned a couple of the whistleblowers, and maybe we should elaborate on that just a little bit. One that I was especially impressed with was Arthur Newman, and he was a high-level physicist with the Lawrence Livermore National Lab in California, and he had top-secret Q clearance, which I don't know exactly what that means, except he had top-secret clearance of some kind. And he said that he commuted to Mars via a teleportation corridor that was disguised as a freight elevator. He said he worked at more than one base on Mars, including the largest facility, which was almost completely underground. Now, as you've alluded to, we have found two, we have images from Google Earth Mars that show things that look like contemporary structures. One's near the South Pole, and the other one is in the Northern Hemisphere. But anyhow, I don't want to jump all over the place. There's other whistleblowers that are, seem to come across as rather credible. There's a Gary McKinnon, and he hacked into the U.S. military computer system and found a reference or references to, and this is a quote, non-terrestrial officers and spaceships. So the ones that are more known would be like Corey Goode and Randy Kramer, who's known as Captain K. And another one that's well known and one that I really respect a whole lot is he was the Army Commander Sergeant Major Robert O. Dean, just known as Bob Dean. He had cosmic top secret clearance, and so he knew a lot of different things. But he said that they've been sending men to Mars for years, and he passed away a couple years ago, so that's going back some time. So there's a lot of credible people. Laura Eisenhower is certainly an interesting person, though her story is so involved, and she mentions ancient bloodlines, and she mentions the fact she was chosen because of the bloodline that went through Eisenhower, and she gets into the Knights Templar and Freemasons and all sorts of different things.
Yeah,
and
that takes it pretty
it begins
far
to read like sci-fi. So, if somebody's trying to be convinced that things are really happening on Mars, I'm not sure that's the story to start with, even though it may be totally true. It sounds like something for fiction.
Well, Corey Goode's material is really fascinating, and I've read a lot about his material and how he was recruited, and he did the teleportation thing between Earth and Mars, and then took part in the space program. that comes out of there. And he had, I think they call it 20 years and out, and they spent 20 years and then they're regressed back to the point in time where they left, and so they spend 20 years out there. They're regressed back so that they come back here to live their lives as though nothing had happened, and for some reason, and supposedly they erase your memory, but something happened and he remembered. And his material is fascinating.
I know, and it's kind of mind-boggling, and so I encourage everybody to explore and read some of this whistleblower information, but at the same time, I want to really present convincing information that something really is going on there. And if people are interested in it, they can just jot down a note. There is something in the 2015 archives for, it's called Global Links, which you can find on the main page of our website, skyshipsovercashiers.com. And the title of it is Satellite Photo of a Spacecraft Parked on Mars. And I have the coordinates, so anybody can copy and paste those into the Google Earth search bar. And if people aren't familiar with Google Earth, up at the top there's a little logo for the Earth, for the Moon, for Mars. There may be another one. And so you click on the one for Mars, and then you get Google Earth images, that are NASA-based. And so we found this circular UFO that is parked on the surface of Mars. And it is not a crater because there is a shadow going off to one side of it, which you would not get in a crater. And this thing is huge. The image that we have is from like 20 miles above Mars, and it is quite sizable. And then what we did was we got a Google Earth image of the Eiffel Tower from 20 miles up. And I've got them next to each other, these images, these photos, and the one on Mars, takes up, is about a third of the width of the photo. The one of the Eiffel Tower looks, you can barely see it. It looks like a little teeny tiny dot. And that gives people a perspective of how big some of these things really are. And we humans have to have things to compare things to, so that's the reason that I put those photos next to each other.
Well, I think also the entrance to the underground that you found. I
didn't.
Huge.
I'm not the one who really found them at first, but I had to go and find them for myself to make sure that it was for real. And the man who got us thinking about that and doing our own search is Stephen, I don't know how he pronounces his last name, it looks like Hennard. And he posted these entrances, and they look like a lintel and post shape that you would have for a door, but they're humongous. They're like, one is 3,696 feet in one direction and 528 feet in the other. That is huge. The largest airport, or the largest airport hangar in the world, which is in Dubai, the biggest dimension is 600 feet, and it's 600 by 360 compared to 3,696. That is just something really huge. And then later, when we began to do more research with this, we found that there are a number of these very square lintel and post type entrances, but they're different proportions. Like the width will be compared to the length, or up and down, will vary. So it's not the same entrance that's being, caught on camera, so to speak. There are multiple ones like that, but they all have the same basic square design. But these are huge, absolutely huge.
Well, and you've got, and see, what fascinates me is that you've clearly shown and indicated how NASA has kind of scrubbed any sort of thing on the surface that they don't want people to know about. You have two photographs there, one with obviously tracks and stuff, and then it's erased in the other in another picture. So why would NASA be trying to deny the evidence that is clearly there?
I don't know. I mean, we most people today have become convinced that there are UFOs, both man-made and from either below the ground or out in outer space. Why they want to keep denying that publicly, perhaps it would open up a can of worms that would be more than they could handle. Perhaps I know they say that it's because they don't want to scare people and that people wouldn't be able to deal with it. I think there's an increasing number of people who could deal with it. Who knows what all the reasons are, but they certainly are hiding a lot of stuff from us.
I mean, when you get right down to it, according to the boy who was interviewed, and that was fascinating, by the way.
Yeah, and there's more to it than that, and if you want to get into it, we certainly can.
Oh yeah, I just he talks about the fact that, I mean, he was able to give a history of what happened on Mars, that there were wars, and was their atmosphere destroyed, or was it? I know they had to go underground. I remember that part of it.
Well, I pulled out that article just because my brain doesn't carry all this information in it. Even though I write it, all of it won't stick. But he gave a lot of statements, and they were all by the time he was 8. So these are not coming from a grown man. They're coming from, a boy. And he apparently could remember past lives, and he was a pilot of what we would call a spaceship. And at that time, there was obviously life on Mars, which is where he lived, but they could very easily make trips to the Earth, and it was back in the time of Lemuria, and that is like Atlantis, except it was a continent that supposedly sunk in the Pacific Ocean, and it seems to have predated Atlantis. They may have overlapped, but it seems to be an earlier civilization. And he became friends with somebody who lived on Lemuria, and he saw his friend get killed. And, even in his life as a boy in Russia, he was very sad about that. He could remember it. And he talked about wars, and he said a major catastrophe took place on Earth. A gigantic continent was consumed by stormy waters. Then suddenly a massive rock fell on my friend who was there. I could not save him. We are destined to meet sometime in this lifetime. And because of all the fighting on Mars and, the conflict with Earth, he's become quite the little pacifist, because he said, you have to, this is a quote, you have to be more sympathetic and warm-hearted. In case someone strikes you, hug your enemy, apologize yourself, and kneel before him. In case someone hates you, love him with all your love and devotion and ask for forgiveness. These are the rules of love and humbleness. And he, obviously suffered greatly from all the destruction and fighting in that lifetime, and is clearly trying to bring a message. Perhaps you can do math in your head real quickly, but he began talking about life on Mars in 1998 when he was 2 years old. So he was born in 96, so it gives you an idea of how old he is now. But this is totally based on the young boy, and he was now known as the baby astronomer. And by the age of 7, his uncanny knowledge caught the attention of scientists with the Russian Academy of Sciences. So that's certainly an article worth reading. It's called Testimony of a Boy from Mars. You could probably just type that into the search bar on the home page, or find it in the 2016 archives of Global Links.
He's 24 now.
The easiest thing might be just type in Testimony of a Boy from Mars.
No, he has to be more than that. He was 2, and he was born in 96.
Right. So, and all of this
24.
information.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still a young
24.
man. Yeah, thank you for doing the math for me.
I had to check it. It just didn't seem right. But come on, when you're born in the 1940s, somehow these dates are getting further and further. It means you're older, and I have trouble accepting that. But yeah, he well, inside it feels a lot different than it looks on the outside.
I can remember my parents saying that they they felt so much younger than they looked.
Oh yeah, it's scary. But
no, that's good. The people who feel that way are the most interesting people. The ones who feel their age are usually boring.
Yeah, that's true. It's kind of like, I'm having so much fun learning so much that, it's sort of like, don't ever tell me I'm out of school, because then I'll probably just atrophy and crumble. But to have those kind of memories are amazing. And he did though also talk that the Martians, speak of the fact that the Martians breathed a different atmosphere.
Mhm.
So it would seem to me that they're not going to attack the Earth. They can't even breathe the air. So, pretty safe there. And I guess if people actually knew there were Martians, that they would be frightened. But I don't know why. I mean, I can't believe that anybody would want to take over the planet. Although in one of the articles it said that Eisenhower did meet with two different extraterrestrials, and he made a deal with the wrong one. I'm not sure what that meant, but
the way I remember it is that he was first approached by what I would call a benevolent race of ETs who offered to help them or help humans, with advancements in good, positive ways, if we would only give up our nuclear weapons. Well, we were just coming out of the World War II, and he was a general and still had the mindset, you got to be defensive, and he would not make that deal. He was then approached by, I'm not sure the race of aliens, I would assume it would be greys or reptilians, and then he signed or made an agreement which may be responsible for some of the missing people and some of the creepy sides of the whole phenomena.
Yeah. Well, it just, to me, I know that in some of the material that I've read, it talks about the fact that the secret space program has been in effect for decades, literally, and that Trump, I read something somewhere that Trump had been read in on some of the stuff, which is why he created the Space Police. So
the Space Force was talked about before Trump.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, he's not the creator of that.
No, but he created it physically. He created the Space Police, knowing that it already existed, so that it could flow more easily into reality.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I don't know. With so many people out there who I feel are very credible. I think Corey Goode is a very credible man, and yet the stories he tells are very hard to swallow, and yet
mm-hmm.
He's stood the test of time for sure. And it's sort of like,
and whenever you hear these kind of stories from whistleblowers, you go, what could they possibly benefit from sharing this information? It is they all are greeted by immense criticism, ridicule, et cetera, and so what's the motivation? It doesn't seem to be money. It doesn't seem to be fame in any kind of way that has its own rewards. So if somebody's telling these stories and going through a whole lot of to share them, you have to at least consider that they might be telling the truth.
Well, I saw a UFO when I was in college, and it wasn't until, almost 40, 45 years later that I met somebody who could validate it. and and up to that point in time, it's even though you know people are going to look at you like they think you're crazy, you kind of have to share it. It's the weirdest thing, and now of course, seeing what I saw is not a big deal at all. It was, Hynek came and said it was swamp gas and then had to back up on his story, but it's sort of like when you have a truth like that in you, you have to. I mean, you don't stand on the corner and hand out leaflets, but when somebody asks you, you tell the truth. And even though they may look at you like you're nuts, you just know that you saw what you saw and experienced what you experienced. And I think that now what I saw was nothing like what Corey Good and some of these other people experienced, and the people that went through MK Ultra and the Montauk stuff. I mean, they really have stories to tell, but it's sort of like society, I think, is becoming, more mature in that they will listen to these stories and not condemn whoever's speaking. They may not want them to teach their children anything, but they aren't you're crazy, get away from me, you're a weirdo anymore. And it does make one feel a little bit better. I know that I used to think that all of these UFOs we saw in the air were from other planets, and now I am more of a mind to say, you don't know if they're made in the USA or in Russia or in Germany or in Japan or in China. And some of them may be extraterrestrial or interdimensional, but
I think we're dealing with three things. I think we have a civilization that beneath the ground, especially down beneath Antarctica, and you and I have talked about Antarctica before, and we have many civilizations out beyond our immediate galaxy. And we have not only our own government, but other advanced governments that would have advanced flying machines. So it's getting more difficult to discern which is which.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, why not do a full disclosure? Why not? I mean, I don't think there would be riots. I think there would be people signing up all over the place to be, included in a lot of this stuff. It wasn't Branson. Who is it that is trying to establish a colony on Mars? And I don't know why they're hopping over the moon, but they seem driven to get to Mars. And so what is it that's driving them to go to Mars? Because if you look at the planet, it looks, we know that there is something going on beneath the surface, but if you look at the surface, it doesn't look at all inviting.
No, it doesn't. It's kind of, yes, it doesn't. It looks like perpetual Southwest without any of the attributes that we find in the Southwest.
And they are talking about a Mars colony before they're talking about a moon colony, and I believe there's already a moon colony, to be honest with you. It's on the dark side, but it's there.
I'm not sure that it's human. My understanding from the pieces that I've put together is, we didn't go back to the moon for an awful long time, and we still seem to be somewhat skittish of it. And the astronauts had seen structures and stuff on the backside of the moon. I think that is of ET origin and not human origin.
Well, at one point, didn't one of the astronauts say they were outside the module, and they looked around and there were huge ships ringing the surface that were much
correct.
bigger than they were.
That's correct.
And it's kind of like, I do believe they were warned off.
Yes, I do too. I think we were told to, take our little butts and go home. So, because there was we got to the moon and then it just stopped. And I don't know how long it was stopped, but we really don't have anything significant going on there now.
But didn't the modules orbit the moon? Didn't they see the dark side of the moon?
My understanding is that they did, and there are pictures supposedly from the dark side of the moon that would indicate that there's, some kind of intelligent life functioning down there, that there are structures. Yeah.
Wow. Well, if we were told to stay away, then I think it's a good idea.
I don't feel like getting in front of them and antagonizing them, quite honestly. But but apparently they're doing this type of thing on Mars. And another article that I've put up back again in 2016. The title is called "Artist Concept May Exist on Mars," and there's this man named Brian Versteeg, and he is a conceptual architectural engineer and artist, and he specializes in like deep space living structures, and he's been his works have been done for the deep space industries, for the Mars Foundation, the Interorbital Systems, National Geographic, New Scientist, Mars Exploration, and we've got a picture of him and also one of his designs, which is like an artistic rendering. And right next to it, we have one of the, it's slightly out of focus, but one of the structures that we have found on Mars, and it's kind of got the basic kind of layout to it. So that would help support the idea that we, have designed these things with the full intention of developing them on Mars, and now we have indications that they're already there.
Wow. Well, do you remember 2001: A Space Odyssey?
I do.
Yeah. One of the messages that came out of that was that we could explore the universe, but we were supposed to stay away from Europa.
I did not. Your memory's better than I am, or you've cheated and listened to it again or watched it again. I do not remember that part.
It was a message that they were given. You can explore the universe, explore the planets, but stay away from Europa. And I was just wondering if anything had been done, or if there's been any information out there about Europa, because I know they found water there. They found water on Europa.
One of the again, I would have to go refresh my memory, but we did a story a bunch of years ago of one of the moons of one of the planets. It may be Jupiter, I don't know, but it looks like something from one of the space movies. You have this, obviously a round ball figure, but then there's this perfect circle on part of it, and it looks like one of the things that have been images that have been used in our sci-fi space movies. I don't know if it's Europa or not, but anyhow, it makes me wonder.
Yeah, I have, for some reason that has stayed with me. That and the music, which I was entranced by. But it was something about Europa, and my gosh, that has to have been almost 50 years ago.
It's a long time ago. I mean, I'd have to look it up, but I just know it's way, way, way back in my memories.
Yeah, it has stayed with me, and I keep waiting to see if something crops up about Europa. But so if our NASA is erasing traces, does our NASA, I know you don't know, but take a guess, do they know what actually is there, or are they just afraid to let anything out that there might be there?
Well, one of my theories, and this I'll have to go with our what we know about Antarctica. We have posted entrances into Antarctica. I believe there's a total of 3 of them now that we have shown. And on one case, it looked like later on, after we'd found this, that somebody had spilled India ink on the images and you couldn't find them anymore. And I suspect that they might have done that because there may still be activity at that entrance and they don't want attention drawn to that. I mean, that's one of the ideas that I've had.
Well, with Antarctica, some of the planes were told not to go over certain areas.
Right, and it's the part where there seems to be a hole going into the interior.
Wow. I just, I am so sure that there's something there that it boggles the mind. Actually, I have somebody that's going to be, I'm going to interview somewhere down the line. It has, and his book has to do with the Hollow Earth Revisited. His name
that
is
should be very interesting.
Danny Weiss, I think is his name. Yeah.
That should be a good show.
They're all good.
Oh,
yeah,
let me go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say I don't do this very often because it's very time consuming, and usually you don't, come up with anything. But one day I was using Google Earth Mars, and just kind of scanning the surface, thinking, well, maybe I'll stumble across something. Usually you don't. But I saw something that literally looked like, I don't know, the image is either like a rash on Mars or like somebody spilled a lot of little coffee grinds. And so I zeroed in on it. And when I did, instead of looking like old stumps from a forest, which is what I called it at first, when I got in close, it looked like it had they all had metallic features to them. I still don't know what it is, but that, if somebody's
like
interested,
cans.
it's got it's kind of like cans, really. But that's in the 2016 archives, and I provide the coordinates again so somebody else can go and find it. But that's a slow process to find stuff that way.
I saw those pictures, and it does look like tubes. When
you zero in, it does. It looks like three-dimensional, almost like barrels, almost. So,
yeah.
Another thing.
There's all this out there. Why are people not paying more attention to it? It just it blows my mind that people look at it and say, yeah, right, and they move on. And I mean, especially with your website, the picture. I mean, you give them the coordinates to go and look at stuff themselves.
And there's two reasons that I do that. One, I think people need to see things for themselves whenever possible, and two, we live in a world of people. Some people who really like to fool other people and like to do Photoshop, and you have to be careful. And I've on a few occasions gotten stung by some of the hoaxers, so you have to be really careful. But that's one way you can do it. If you can go and find it for yourself and use the coordinates, and my God, it's there, that helps give credibility. Another thing that can be found that way, the title I've got is "It Looks Like Train Tracks on Mars," and literally there's this track that goes horizontally. I mean, at an angle across the photo, and you can see something on this track which looks like maybe a little cart, and it goes into like I'll say like a little mountain group, and then it comes out the other side and ends up in another cluster that looks like a crater or a mountain, and then it ends there. But again, there's the coordinates there for people to try it for themselves. I think the easiest thing for people to do is to type Mars into the search bar on the home page, and hopefully maybe a whole bunch of those things will come up. If not, go to go to our global links section, and that's where all of these Mars things can be found.
Well, I found all of those just in the search engine on your website.
That's good. That's what I'm.
Yeah, no,
it's somewhat limited. It's somewhat limited because our search bar is Google related, but you can get to most of our things that way.
Yeah, it's an amazing, to sit there and keep to be honest with you, I didn't even see the search engine until a couple of days ago, and I thought, well, this makes it all very much simpler.
Makes it a lot easier, right? So.
Well, yeah, and actually, by just going through the archives, I kept getting distracted by other things that I found fascinating as well, and it kind of is. It's amazing, especially with the Mars stuff. I think people should really take some time and check that out, because obviously there's something going on there. Even I think Branson is getting ready to send people up into space, and Mars is something that he was aiming at as well. So, and again, avoiding the moon, which to me doesn't make sense. But Mars has had lights that have been shown on it that there's no explanation for. I mean, there's so much going on there. It's worth spending time checking it out every couple of days and seeing if you can find something that you hadn't seen before. It's a big planet, but to me, it feels like there is something really going on there, and it would explain why the secret space program was sending people there. It explains a tremendous amount, and I think it's very exciting because it takes what had once been science fiction and makes it reality. And that, everybody wanted to live during the time of Star Trek, and now all of us have doors that open when we walk there and close, and all of us have little
That's true.
I mean, we are living in science fiction times and don't even realize it.
You're absolutely right.
To it.
Yeah, back in the 50s, I don't know when the magic doors began to open into stores. Do you? Can you? I don't know how far back you have to go for that. But they didn't always exist, that's for sure.
No. And the flip phones and the tricorders, they scan people now. I mean, there's so much that was that in Star Trek, especially that was so futuristic it could never happen, and we're living it. It's happening.
Right. Another example of this is think how much you can do with a cell phone, how much memory, how many things you can search and find. It used to take a whole room full of computer things to get the information we can get in a little tiny handheld phone now.
Yeah.
One of my first early jobs in life was working at a newspaper, and at that time they had a room, a really big room full of giant computers, and they had to keep the air conditioning at a certain temperature just so these computers would, function correctly. And, now everybody who works in a newspaper can do it off a laptop.
Yeah. And I have to admit, I've gotten so used to working with a keyboard and the computer that I don't do things in longhand as much as I used to do. And yet I always print out a copy because I don't trust the computer.
When I wrote my first book a long, long time ago, I had a little simple electric typewriter, and at that time I had just decided I was not going to be one of these people who always talked about doing a book and it was just half done in their bottom drawer. So I just took some time just to work on my first book. And I lived on the beach in a simple little place. And so in the morning when my brain is freshest, I would be there. And with an old typewriter like that, you can't just cut and paste and do stuff like you can now. And so if I had a good paragraph, I would cut it off and save it in a pile, wad up the other, throw it away, save that, type some more, and then I would piece it together physically for my rough drafts. And, think how hard how difficult that seems compared to what we can do now. Just amazing.
Yeah, and, you mentioned your books, and I do want to, my favorite of all the books that you've written, and you've written 4 now? 4.
I have 4 that are available through Amazon at this time. I did some earlier books that are no longer in print.
Well, my favorite is Bigfoot Beyond the Footprints.
That's the most recent
everybody,
one.
Everybody I give it to ends up crying. Because you make them, you give us a better understanding of the fact that they aren't really violent and they aren't really, they don't want to eat your heads, and there is a sense of humanity to them.
The better half of humanity.
Oh gosh, yeah. And the absolutely, and they're especially their way of gifting. You give them a gift and they keep it for a while and they give it back. I mean, it's just you have touched on so many precious aspects of them that you make them much more endearing. You don't want to go out and make one a best friend right away, but you're not scared of them. And what they've done today with the news and with all of these reality shows where they're going to go out and hunt and catch a Bigfoot and cut its head off so they can see if it has a brain or whatever. I mean, those are horrible.
Right. And the reason I wrote, there's multiple reasons why I wrote the book, but one of the reasons was because I was sick and tired of hearing about big footprints howling and of the Bigfoot and them taking big branches of trees and whacking them against trees, to communicate. And I was tired of the stories of, people hunting them and all that, distorted type stuff. I had done research over a number of years and had found so many firsthand eyewitnesses to the very human, I'm using human in the best sense, to the very human side of Bigfoot. They have families. They've made friends with certain humans. They're very selective about who they're going to be friends with, but nevertheless they do. And one of the things that might surprise a lot of people is that they have a very interesting genetic background, and this has been well studied now. And the mother side of the Bigfoot is human. The father side is some unknown species they've been unable to identify.
Wow. So they got DNA and they had the mitochondrial and
in order to figure out, they have to get the mitochondrial DNA or the nuclear DNA in order to get the paternal information. So a lot of times you will have like a hair sample, which I found out the hard way. I sent one off to a lab to have it analyzed and paid to have it done, and the nuclear DNA wasn't there, so all they could say was that it was human. Without that nuclear DNA, you do not find the uniqueness of the Bigfoot.
Wow.
And so, like with the hair, you have to get the follicle in order to get the nuclear DNA.
Ah. Wow. Well, I have often believed and postulated that they're interdimensional.
And that's harder to prove. That is really harder to prove. And I hear stories about that, but how can I present that in a way that's convincing or real? But yes, you keep hearing that, and you have to, consider that might very well be true.
Well, I think, to me, that's one of the reasons why we've never really, I hope that they never catch one.
Right, I agree with you.
Because the worst thing in the world they could do would be, if they caught one, they would put it in a cage, and that would be just so wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
absolutely. And one of the defenses that the Bigfoot have is that they have never lost what we humans have lost. They have never lost their telepathic ability. They can pick up on human beings at a distance. They sense, what we're about if we can be trusted. And with that ability alone, they can avoid us.
Well, I'm glad of that, because I think they're precious. And they may be here when humans destroy themselves. It's kind of not like the cockroach, but it would seem to me that they will survive no matter what, and we as humans probably not. If
we might not.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
and they may well have been around prior to the last ice age. They may well have been around, they may have been around for longer than 10, 12,000 years.
well, one
So
of the
that
things that puzzles me is that they have human DNA. So does that mean that they couldn't have existed until humans existed? Or is there some big genetic lab up in somewhere else that could have put that together, put that kind of DNA material together, long before that? Because some of the reports are that the Bigfoot were here before us humans. Well, how do you jive that with the fact that they have human DNA in them? It's got to be, I don't know. It means they either weren't here for a long time before we were, or there's been genetic manipulation at a level that we are not aware of.
Yeah, or just over time, some evolved into a different direction than others, and we lost that gene.
I don't know.
Wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it screw with everybody if it turns out we evolved from the Bigfoots?
Yeah, that would screw people's minds. There's no doubt about it.
They would definitely have to rewrite books, but
we've made a couple of T-shirts, and it has the face that I have on the book, for the Bigfoot book, but underneath it says, I'm going to forget what it said, Bigfoot, mankind's cousin, or something along those lines.
You never know, and it wouldn't be bad,
No?
because frankly, they are gentle and non-invasive and very family-oriented. So,
and they work real hard to avoid us.
Which means they're smarter than we are.
Yeah. So.
Oh, crap. Our time is up. Mary, thanks so much.
And that Bigfoot book, people can get it through Amazon. And if you go to the website and open up Editor's Corners, you can find a little summary of each of the 4 books that I have. And again, they're all available on Amazon.
And they're all worth getting and reading because she makes the reading so easy and so delightful and has lots of pictures, which is even better. And all of them are phenomenal. The Little People one, the Jesus one, the Little People, the Jesus.
The other one's the Underground
Bigfoot,
Bases.
And the Underground Bases. Thank you. No, they're all phenomenal reads. And
they're all different.
Oh, yeah.
Format's kind of the same. I always use pictures and write kind of concisely, but the topics are all totally different.
None of these are 500-page books. They're great books.
No. Most people don't have time for that.
No, that's true. But I highly recommend them all. I have them all, and I just adore them. I love the Bigfoot one best, but the other ones are cool too. So
Alrighty.
I thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Oh, they're great, and please check out Skyships over Cashiers. It is a phenomenal website. It will occupy you for days, weeks, months, years. There's so much material there, and it will stir your curiosity into directions that you never imagined. And it's an amazing website. And Mary, thank you so much for being here again. And I look so forward to comparing notes with you again next month sometime.
All righty. I wish you and all your listeners a real nice evening.
Thanks a lot. Good night now, everybody, and thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again around here when we do Skyships over Cashiers again, but also next Monday and Tuesday. Mark and I will be back each with a show to further titillate you. Good night now.